Hi, good morning.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, good. Episode 52. Good thinking.
Yeah, a podcast about marketing trends, culture, and all the things I'm sharing on Slack, except that I don't have to share them with you on Slack anymore because I share them with you via an email now. So much more
Yes,
efficient.
I love it. I love it. Well, lots to dig into. People are really digging it. So let's jump in. So much I want to dig into and talk about in the newsletter. So we'll kind of try to do a lot of things, but in thoughtful period of time. So I want to talk about, you talked about bad boy brands and don't die certified as like the things that we need to talk about, which I think we do need to talk about, but kind of going through, as is the format of the newsletter. I want to talk about the skim.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you sent that to me.
I just think it's so, yeah, and I want your specific take on it. So basically, with the Trump administration, and jump in if I have this wrong, with the Trump administration, they took down the reproductive rights .gov and all of the information of what you could do and what if you needed to and all of the different options, et cetera, et cetera. And they took that down, like I think day one immediately. The people at the skim were smart enough, tactical enough that they basically, created a new site, bought the URL and kind of created a new site with kind of all of that information on their site, correct?
Yeah, I mean, so there's obviously the Internet Archive, which, so nothing that ever really is gone is ever really gone, except that it doesn't evolve, right? And then they talk about that. So like it will forever kind of remain. It's not being updated currently. I mean, maybe there'll be another great brand who kind of steps in and we'll start seeing this bandwagon thing where someone comes in to like kind of be the shepherd for new information as it needs to be added. But currently it's just kind of like whatever it looked like, the day before it went down. But they took that and they put it up on the internet, which is amazing, And I think that there's a lot of people like my brother like used to work for this company called Enigma, and when the government shut down, like Enigma stepped in and they started providing information like that the government couldn't provide. This was years ago. And I think there's a lot of activism like that that's really interesting. Like I think as brands talk about wanting to have more freedom of speech, but then obviously banning books and banning websites and taking down information, we're heading into a kind of a different direction. And I think we'll start to see brands delving into politics who would never have previously waded in these waters. And I think, quite frankly, and I've talked about this before, in the 2025 predictions, is that we're going to start to see brands who, like, whether or not they want to wade in these political waters, are going to be wading in them, whether or not they want to be or not. With Maha, with like Make America Healthy Again, these conversations and different things that are going to come up are big. Like today I saw Elf came out with a big CNN interview where they said like, hey, like we are here for diversity, as all of these government agencies but also private companies are shutting down their diversity and equality efforts. Then they are saying, hey, no, like this, we know that this is important to our consumer, we know that this is important to us as a business, and it's something that we stand for. And I think, did they set out to wade into a political water this week? No, but they took the moment, they're
Yeah,
shining when they need
yeah.
to. So
And
I
they've been
think
talking
that's
about
going to
that
happen
for,
more.
yeah, I totally agree. And they've been talking about that for a minute. And I think the other thing, the reason that they did is I think they're a brave brand, and they've shown that. They've shown that they're not afraid of the hard conversations. And I think we've seen that with Elf, and DEI is a huge thing. And a lot of private companies are like, oh, we no longer need it, for some crazy reason. They think that. And Elf has really kept with that. And I think you're absolutely right. Like I wouldn't have thought, oh, the skim will get into, activism, but they certainly are. And I'm 100% here for it. All right. Dr. Squatch and ayahuasca.
Another thing you sent me. So, Kirsten quietly contributing all the things to the newsletter this week. Yeah, so obviously you sent this to me, probably with some eyeball emoji, like being like, what? Say what? And, I think in general, like we've seen a few brands sponsor comedy series. I think they do really well. Those clips do really well on social media, and they're like a great way to sponsor content because it's really ongoing. You become known for it. Your logo's always there. These pieces can have instant virality. But I think one thing that's more interesting to me is, like, hey, they might not necessarily have even signed off on that content. They may have an agreement where it's like, hey, whatever the comedian wants to talk about is what they get to talk about. I don't know. But if it's not that, and even if they said that they have a green light to do so, then that tells you something about this brand, right? They're willing to kind of like, again, wade into waters that they weren't previously maybe wading into. Though this brand has kind of always been a little bit more of, I'd say, like a bad boy brand. Not really, but like, bad boy light. And I think it's really interesting to see brands talk about drug use or, smoking, like Madewell, and like just brands are becoming unshackled from like these, like, oh, like it's not appropriate for a brand to do so. And it's like, if it's appropriate for a person to do so, now a brand is also at a place where you can choose kind of that level of appropriateness. And that's up to a brand to decide at this point.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's the nugget, right? I think that's the nugget, and I think it ties back to what we were just talking about with the activism, right? What used to be only okay for an individual to do, for a person to do, brands are now doing, and there's a gateway for that. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, the bigger point in that like piece is that I think a few brands are leaning. There was the golf brand that I saw that I found through a 3D rendering artist that I love. I'll add her in the show notes. Fantastic. But she did some work for them, and I was like, whoa, what's this? Like, Marlboro Lights meets golf is not exactly where you think things are going, but it definitely is in 2025. And then even Nike. So like, I don't know if you watched that ad, but the Nike ad features a tennis player, and I'm terrible with names. So again, we won't be talking about the tennis player's name, but she is known for having an amazingly quick and powerful serve. And so they have her serving, and like they're measuring the speed and the force of her serve. And she is literally smashing a car to pieces. And I'd say, Nike sort of had lost its edge for a little while, and I think this is a new edge. Like, I don't think this is an old edge. That Nike was never really that kind of like, we're going to smash a car type of brand. And I think it's just a really interesting time to see that brands are, again, like, Fred talks about, and I have a post coming up on LinkedIn tomorrow that I wrote today that is about Frida doing this. So maybe I'll share that. But like Frida has a snot covered billboard up in like an out of home billboard in New York at the moment. And even they're leaning into being kind of bad. So Frida, if you don't know who the Frida brand is, it's like a brand for moms. I mean,
it's a snot sucker.
Obvious.
I mean, let's just say what it is.
But like but they also have a lot of other products. Like they make amazing postpartum underwear, the best out there for sure. They make a lot of things. So they make products for babies, but they make products for moms. But they're a really fantastic brand. But they're definitely not a brand that you would ever think of being provocative in any way. I don't think snot sucker is only provocative because it like gives you the ick, right? But what they did is that they have this out of home campaign like Wheat Pace, and it has snot literally on it, and then they're asking people to go up and like suck the snot out with the snot sucker. Amazing. And people are freaking out. But then when you look at the comment section, you see that actually they're hitting it right on the nose, because it is I know. Because most parents are giving testimonials in the comment section about how amazing the product is. And they're like, yes, you think it's gross, but actually this thing has saved my life so many times. I can't tell you how many sleepless nights I have fixed with this snot sucker, and it's ended earaches for me, and da-da-da-da-da. And it's just testimonial after testimonial after testimonial for how amazing this product is. That's on Instagram and on LinkedIn, where I saw it initially. So I just think it's so interesting. They have it, and then I started digging into Frida, and they have this lady who's like doing this really fun play on dupes as like piece of content on Instagram, where she's like standing on the street corner and she opens her jacket and she's like trying to sell you like knockoff snot suckers and like a knockoff Rolex. And it's
Totally.
just like, if you're going to talk about dupes, like talk about them exactly like this. But it's cheeky, it's kind of inappropriate, it's bold, it's like deliberately trying to do things. And if you read like what Fred wrote about it, is that he's like, we're really in a phase where we want to bring a reaction. And it's not just a reaction for reaction's sake. If you see how Frida does it, what they're doing is getting the ick out of these people, which is like an interesting reaction. But then over here with their consumer, they're actually getting a hell yes, that's me. And that product has saved my life. And I I'm here for this campaign like 100%. And there's just cheers and claps and everything.
Totally.
But it takes a provocative campaign in order to do that. They weren't going to just be like, oh, it's not sucker. Like if you posted like a standard, like.
Totally. But I love that because it's like you're not going to get that emotional connection, which is clearly there for customers if they're writing all of those reviews. That emotional connection with a brand because you've had that experience is amazing. And the fact that they want to share that because of this.
So I just love,
provocative.
I love that everybody is kind of like saying, like, okay, like unprecedented times calls for having some fun and like not being like so contained and so like, for your mom. Like content. It's like this content's not for your mom, quote unquote, except that your mom probably love it. But like, you know what I mean? Like it's like they're just don't. I think brands are realizing, or great brands anyway, are realizing that they don't need to be kind of like so, I don't know, constrained.
Yeah, it's our unleashed era, and I'm 100% here for it. Brands, it's getting much more fun. All right, speaking of fun, Metamucil.
Well, first of all, if Metamucil is listening, this is my plea. So, yeah, I mean, so in the Metamucil thing, I talk about the sort of the setup to it is that there's a lot of conversation that I've been seeing over the last, probably year, but if not more, around fiber and increasing fiber into your diets. And if I've, having spent a lot of time with you, I know that psyllium husk is, part of the wellness drink, you're going to have to explain to everybody what your drink is. But it's not a new thing, but I think the conversation around it is increasing, and it's not nearly as like a big of a conversation as say protein is, but like it's big. And so there's this new brand that came out, and it's by the founder of Jenny's Ice Cream, and it's around fiber and fiber bars. But then you go onto Metamucil's like Instagram and you look at like what they're doing, and it's just like they are like, I don't even know who they're for, right? Like, are they for the bro? Like, are they for the wellness person? Like, they could be for all of these people done correctly. And like, yet I feel like they're just like, I think of them as like, I don't even know that they have, like, I don't even know if people know that it has psyllium husk in it. Like, I just don't think that people know. I think they think of it as like, what you need to stay.
Your grandparents' drink.
Like, yeah.
Like you would never touch it because it's your grandparents' drink. I think that's my interpretation.
And they could completely change that. Like that future exists for them. And there is a moment right now that if they lose it, then there's going to be another version.
Yeah, because there are already versions coming out that I have. There's a few rad brands that are trying to move, pun intended, move the psyllium husk movement. So yeah, I create a daily drink. The base of it is psyllium husk. It's called the Long Life Cocktail, and it was from the Fat Flush that I did years and years ago. But it is the base, and I have it every single day. And oddly enough, when I was in Florida traveling there, when Sailor was at camp, and I didn't have psyllium husk, forgot it or whatever, I went to the market, and the only thing available was Metamucil. And so that's what I had instead of my psyllium husk. So perfect transition. But I definitely, in my head, and it looked the same as when I saw it on my grandparents' counter 40 years ago.
It's like a slightly updated logo, like, but it just doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't, nothing about it makes you, if it a little bit feels like, like maybe some updates to like traditional cereal brands. Like you're not like, ooh, like it's totally new and like, I'm here for it. It just feels like kind of dated in its approach, even though
Right.
it's probably judged.
But I think the important thing to me about this is it's not just like, oh, you know what, let's update the logo and make it a little bit more of a modern brand. It's really about, hang on, guys, this is an opportunity to really, you can really, be part of a movement. Just keeps coming. To really, like, now is the time. So it's positioning within that. Here's, how we could really kind of make it happen. And let's update the brand to really live up to that positioning.
Especially as we know that they have all of the accounts already. Like, that's the thing that, like a market position like they have is enviable, right? They have the shelf space, they have the agreements, they have, like, they're everywhere. Like, you go into any CVS, any supermarket, you can get a Metamucil. But who's buying it? No one's going to seek it out. Well, maybe you in Florida.
Right. No, well, but I think that's the thing. Someone's buying it, and I bet they're scared to turn off that customer and get this customer because they do have so many accounts. It's a P&G brand, all of the things.
But
it
even
can be
this
a yes
older
and.
customer, this silver customer has changed. And I think this is something that I talk about a lot, is I actually think that silver customer is not so far off of the customer that they could potentially grab this, like, certainly this menopausal group of women and, like, have them feel good about it and have them tell their kids that they should have it, and then those kids feeling good about it, so Gen X women are incredibly powerful, like, influential group in terms of their own interpersonal families. Like, they're influencing in both directions and they have a lot of sway. So I think that, like, to me, like, you don't have to alienate, like, say you have this, like, 80-year-old, like, reliable consumer. Like, you don't have to alienate that person in order to get this consumer, but you can't just carry on and hope for the best.
Yep. Well, we're here for you. All right. Speaking of that, let's transition into silvers. Patch me up.
Well, it's silvers, alphas, and Zs, right? Technically, that, like, or does it just say silvers this week?
No. Silvers, alphas, and Zs.
Yeah.
You remember that correctly.
I think even the article that I read about it, this brand says it's going after Zennials, which is, like, a term that some people use, some people don't use. It's just, like, not even worth getting into. Yeah, I mean, I think this brand, like, so I was like, besides the name, which, I don't want this to be a podcast about how bad names are, but, like, it could be a podcast about how bad names are. The what's,
we're here to help.
Like, Sup Co feels like a brand that should have come out in, like, about 2015 in terms of the naming, or maybe even earlier. Like, I just don't think that name feels relevant. But the branding is adorable. The patches are very cute. Like, would 100% wear that patch. And then when you look at the ingredients that they're putting in it, like, they're starting to put in some, like, very trendy, like, either TikTok trendy or Erewhon trendy, like.
I recognize all the ingredients. I think I'm taking most of them. Yeah.
Yes. Now, how do I know those ingredients? So, I think, I say that, like, there's other things that they could add that could make it, like, really, like, if I've not read one thing about NADs or NADs, I don't know what we're calling them.
I think NADs. NADs, I think, is something else.
Yeah, I think it feels not right? These, like, I've read 12 things about them this week. It's a little bit like the fascia thing. So, I think that there's obviously more they could add, but I think the branding is successful. And I do think, like, one of the things about launching a new product is you do kind of have to be quite timely. And I think, like, new format, timely ingredients, it works. I could see it taking off. And for sure, Gen Z loves a patch. So.
Right.
Loves a patch.
Amazing. That was a repositioning for sure. Okay, retail, there's a lot to talk about, but let's just dig into the rest in peace, the website. Because this is an ongoing perspective. That's, I think, is important to share.
The Stories We Tell Ourselves is a fantastic Substack, and Ariane reached out to me and she was like, hey, you are one of the only people on the internet who's talking about AI and retail, which is definitely not true, but it is shocking that there aren't more people out there kind of spouting this gospel, because quite honestly, like, my interest in AI is, like, very peripheral. So the fact that I am, like, somehow, like, turning into an authority on this topic is surprising, but I do spend a lot of time thinking about it. And one of the things that she asked some really smart questions. The interview is extremely long. I highly recommend, if you're in retail and you really want to know what's coming, like, It's a long read. It's a worth a read. But I talk about a few points about it in the article. Like, I think that what's coming for retailers that they're not prepared for is that, and I've talked about this before, but you are not going to go on someone's website to make a purchase. It's not like you search in Google and then Google leads you to this person's website, or like a wholesaler website like Air One or whatever, and you purchase it. You are going to purchase it inside of ChatGPT, inside of Perplexity, inside of DeepSeek, if we want to use that, because I know everyone's having a freak out about DeepSeek today. But I think that's a really big change. And I think that people don't, even just that bit of knowledge, I think is really hard for people to wrap their minds around. Your website is going to become a repository for information for the AI to make its recommendations. AI loves to be trustworthy, despite what you think. So what it's looking for is it's saying, okay, if I have 5 recommendations to make, which is probably 3 to 5 is what it's going to make, and it's saying, hey, you're going to buy this sofa, you're going to buy this jacket, you want to whatever. Like, it's like, okay, Kirsten values like high quality. She's given me a price point. She likes these brands historically. Like, it's going to know all that. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but that is the future. And it will be here within the year, if not 2 years. Everyone will be using AI. Everyone will be making these purchases. It will be able to go back and see your history. It will know what brands you like. It's going to know the things that you value. And it's going to make those decisions on behalf of a consumer. So there's going to be a couple things that happen. One, it's going to be looking for your website for all of this information that makes sure that it's saying the right thing, the trustworthy thing. So your website will turn into more of this like place where it's getting information for the AI. When you're kind of like, if you're between two things, you might go onto this website, but you're likely not going to buy there even if you go there. You're going to be going on to like make sure it feels right. And actually what we find with people making purchases on Instagram is that they're actually looking for things after the fact. So it's not even really like, so anyway, all to say is that the purpose of your website is going to completely change. So you're going to have to think about that. You're also going to have to think about the fact that if you're given 5 brands, right? Like 5 choices. What's going to be the tipping point for you? The fact that you have brand awareness. Like, that is going to be so much bigger than it is.
So choose the one that's familiar.
It's not going to be an SEO game of who came up in the first 10 links, because AI can go through 4,578,000, whatever links it wants, and it's giving you the 5 perfect ones. It's not going to be that you gamed the system of Google and had the best SEO and you beat out your competitor. That's not how this game is played. Like, not at all.
Right.
It's going to be a paradigm shift. And people are not ready.
So my question is, as a retailer, what should a retailer be doing right now?
I think there's a couple of things. I think that they need to be kind of mentally processing that. Like, step one, wrap your head around the future. Step 2, think about what kinds of content. Like, I think actually, like, I have a pretty provocative quote in there that I was like, is this going to be the end of the e-com photo as we know it? And that's not true, because AI also likes details. But it might want different kinds of e-com photos. Like, it might actually be looking at for a buckle photo, for this photo, for an extremely high res photo, but like, it's going to be showing you all sorts of different content, pulling it from all different places. So you're going to have to start to think about content differently. You're going to have to start thinking about storytelling differently. I also think you're going to want to start thinking about some big brand awareness campaigns. I think you're going to probably want to familiarize yourself with all of these platforms. There are brands, obviously, like Instacart, who's kind of ahead of the game, who have like apps within that. I think there's going to be plenty of retailers that have to build and will build their own apps within, especially big retailers like Zara or something like that. And I also think retail will matter more than ever, similar to brand awareness. Like, I think that people are going to be seeking out human experiences. They're going to be seeking out ways to connect with brands. They're going to be seeking out things that they want to see. And this is a way for you to actually tell your story, so that when it comes to that 5-second, 5 choices decision, that you're not making because leather brand, whatever came up on the first thing, or even that some like affiliate person is like, I mean, affiliate will also be huge here. So like there's that. Like I think that's not going away. But yeah, it's just going to be a really, really, really different game.
Amazing. I mean, the future feels really bright from where I'm sitting. Like brand awareness, retail, brands more unleashed, more fun. I'm in. But let's bring back the DEI
She's
thing because
signing up
that's
for the
important.
she's signing up for the
Yeah.
plus package minus all of the, you know, the
Yeah.
the
I'd
lack of
like
freedom of
reproductive
speech.
rights and DEI as a part of that as well, if
Yes.
I can add that on
Yes,
the menu.
exactly.
Let's move on to sport. I want your take on Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari. I know kind of, you know a thing or two about the European sports
I do.
that are growing here, but also, I mean, such an interesting brand move.
It won't shock you that I grew up watching Formula One on the periphery, like I grew up watching all sports, because I actually have an enormous amount of sports watching under my belt for somebody who doesn't pay attention to sports.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
It is really, it was, yes, I grew up on this. So, you know, I think like obviously it's a really big deal. Everybody's favorite driver. You know, obviously Lewis Hamilton is also like, I don't want to say that he's at the end of his career because like, you know, but he is towards the end of his career. And this is like a really big move, but it's also a very symbolic move. And, you know, he's also been consistently positioning himself closer to fashion and like those kinds of conversations and like really presenting himself as a tastemaker and not just a driver, which is, you know, very different to some of his teammates or competitors who are younger, right? And they're more in that feisty phase of their careers. But just the photography of this launch was just like, goodness gracious. Like you saw it and it was like arresting. Like you're like, okay, like this
Arresting
is
the
some
perfect word.
real, very considered, very thought through, very iconic photography for two very iconic brands coming together. And then I started digging in deeper to what they were doing on TikTok and how they kind of built up this. And everybody knew this was coming, right? This is not a shock and awe thing. This is just a day that it was going to be done. But I just love that they had these like storytelling moments. And like, I obviously live not very far from Ferrari's like home base. I've been to all of their places, no shocker of shocks. Great wine country too, but maybe you know why I went there. So, but like it is a really beautiful, iconic place and like they just do it really well. So yeah, it was big claps. I thought they did a great job.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, moving on to wellness and beauty. A lot of things I want to dig into, but don't die certified.
So, I mean, Bryan Johnson, I mean, if you're not paying attention to Bryan Johnson, then you probably aren't reading the newsletter. But like, so Bryan Johnson is famous for his like campaign or life's mission to not die. And he does a lot of things to himself, tracks a lot of things. I mean, even just this week, he was on, you know, he's a very controversial guy, right? This guy, if you don't spend any time, like, I mean, he's like what he was in the news for this week, just that. But he is kind of and has been for a long time at the forefront of a conversation that I think is going to increase with this whole Make America Healthy Again, which is all of the things around preservatives and heavy metals and, you know, all of the different things that are in food that are frankly like quite alarming, you know, like forever chemicals, all of these things that are just not tracked and not talked about or haven't really been widely talked about to the general public. And so he's creating a certification, or he tweeted about it on, it sounds like he's still looking for a co-founder. So if that's you, you should reach out. But he wants to create a certification that would essentially be something, you know, like the organic symbol or B Corp or like, you know, any of these like certification process lead for buildings, etc., that would say like, hey, this proves that this doesn't have this many heavy metals, doesn't have this, doesn't have that. And quite honestly, like I think that this is one of the few certifications that I actually think that people want. Like I do think, especially for parents, I think that there is everything that you read about what is in baby food is just absolutely dire. And so not that I ever gave my child baby food because, you know, everything is like whole food, but like whatever. It's more the point. Like I still gave her the packets of things and you still worry about what's in it.
Yeah, my kids had the packets all day long.
Yeah, those little juice like
they were the
things. I
genius.
love those.
Genius.
Yeah, alarming amount of plastic. But anyhow, I think that it's a certification that could work if it's done right. He's obviously kind of a lunatic and like an extremist. And so I actually think that he would probably have like fairly good criteria that people want.
Great. I'm in.
So we'll see. I mean, the name, I'm not sure the name is working for me, but it's his brand.
Yeah, we can reposition that. I mean, certification, that's a whole soapbox to get behind and figure out how to do it in a really meaningful way.
It is really
separate
hard.
conversation.
And yeah,
separate
that
conversation.
Could be a podcast in and of itself. Kirsten has lots of thoughts.
Could be a book, yes, for sure.
If that's the book you write, I will die.
Yeah, no, there's way more interesting
content.
Certification.
This is what you become famous for. I will just, that'll be it.
Need something to put you to sleep at night. For sure, more interesting subjects that are going to be written about way before that. Okay. Travel is really interesting, but I think that there's some commonalities, and I think it's about kind of, as you always do, really connecting the dots for those, right? So we have will travel for contrast, smells like Paris, never not vacationing. Like I was reading and putting all of these through, and it's like yes to all of them, but it's about almost like taking you to the next level. There's an extremism and like a immediate activation for them.
Yeah, and we talked about, I mean, in the 2025 predictions, we talked about kind of one-stop things. And I think like one of the things that I've noticed is that obviously the contrast therapy is combined with all of these other things that people want to, testing you for heavy metals, making sure that you have the right testosterone levels, like, coming in, like all of these different wellness things. But there is kind of this obvious, there's a lot of studies that people talk about now with like the saunas and how they're going to like make you live forever. And so I think there is so much happening in terms of those conversations. The fragrance thing, I think, is, it's been, fragrances was and has been like such a big conversation over the last like year. I think it is funny because the other side of fragrance is that there's so many places that they're like, and I experience this a lot living in Europe where fragrance is beloved, is that like, they're like, can I, like give you a bill for the, the cancer that you're causing me as I come into this place with all these like synthetic fragrances. So I do think there is kind of this other rising conversation that we should be paying attention to, which is the fragrance backlash. So yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening.
The pendulum swing. All right. Are we ready for the fun?
Yeah, let's hit on one fun thing at least.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think the Monoprix home collab.
And I only mentioned one of the people in this. So like Maison Objet, right, is having like a real moment on the Instagram this week. It's doing really well for itself. I really think like these design shows, they're really back in a big way. Like they,
that's a rad, yeah.
They took a dip, but like, let me tell you, like design shows are back, people.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, and we should dig into that a bit more because I absolutely agree with you. But
Milan Design Week was huge last year, and like all of these like design shows are really coming back in a way that like actually fashion shows have not like completely figured out. But
yeah, Maison Objet used to be a really tiny, like almost like you would go like to find the unknown.
Yeah, but no, I mean, Monoprix like launched it, and Garance Valet was like, I've collected some of her prints before, and like I'm just obsessed with her. But like, she's really become a furniture designer in the last like 5 years, more than like an artist, and like, well, maybe not more than an artist, but like, but there were dozens in that like Instagram link that I shared.
It's beautiful.
Of like cool brands, and they're like working with some cool people, and I was like, what is Target doing? Like, we are asleep at the wheel, people. Like, I need to go to Monoprix. So yes, watch out.
Here for it.
I don't know what
Monoprix
is not that big, like outside of France. So
no,
they're investing for like a much smaller audience.
Yeah. I thought Mejuri, the tennis sponsorship, was interesting because they're a brand that I see a lot of just being that I see the stores in LA, but interested to see like where they've always felt a little bit tight and like not sure what direction as a brand they're going to go in. And there's so much competition in that space now.
Exactly. And I felt similarly. And like, I was like, oh, like this is just kind of unexpected from them for me. I think they have been doing stuff, but nowhere near kind of like the merit or the cool like girl brands that are kind of out there really like going forward in terms of like launches and collabs and things. And like what I liked about it was also like they're getting into this sports game. Like obviously the tennis bracelet is like, you know, like it's been around for decades. So it's not like anything new, but it's timely right now, you know? Like it's timely. And so I just like that they were trying something different. And yeah, working with a actual tennis player. Like,
Yep, for sure.
cool.
Okay, there's time for one more. You want to pick it? You want me to jump in?
No. Just I like the
All
surprise
right.
and delight of this whole experience.
Yeah, great. Year of the snake photography, which I couldn't be more into, and I'm so glad my last tattoo was a snake. So here we are.
I mean, Vibrams are not a brand that I would say you're like chic, right? Like it's just not two brands. Like for anyone who doesn't know what Vibrams are, they're basically like the finger toe kind of like.
The toe
I think
shoes.
of them. I think of them as I think of my friend Porter who like lived in Utah and like probably, you know, like you can picture it, you know, like hanging out with like shorts and his Vibrams. Um so just loved the photography, thought it was really elevated, and obviously brands are doing really great things, but I just thought it was like really well done, really well executed. And like I think maybe like we're gonna have like a resurgence of like fantastic photography this year. Like I mean with
So here for this.
right like with the Ferrari, and like you know last year was maybe the year of the movie, but maybe we're back to just good old basic fantastic photography, which would be
Really
fantastic.
beautiful. Yeah, I am here for
Yes.
that. All right. We got a call to jump on.
All right. This was fun. Ciao.
Yeah, this is great. Till next time.